For doors down from where I grew up, there's a house nobody has entered in 11 years. The family who lived there left overnight. No goodbye, no for sale sign, just gone. Over the years, people tried to approach it. A council worker, a property developer, a group of teenagers on a dare. Every single one of them turned back before getting to the front gate. Nobody could explain why. 3 months ago, the son of that family came back. Philip Aldrin, 27 years old, same age as me. He knocked on my door and told me why his family had really left, what his father had seen inside that house, what it had done to him. And then he asked me to go inside with him. I should have said no. I knew I should have said no, but I had been staring at that house for 11 years, and part of me had always needed to know what was in there. This is what we found. Every street has one. A house that sits slightly apart from the rest, that nobody talks about directly, but everybody knows about. The one with the overgrown garden and the curtains that never move and the mailbox that stopped being emptied years ago. On my street, that house belongs to the Aldrin family. Or it did once. Nobody is sure what it belongs to now. My name is Nadia. I'm 27. I've lived on Crestfield Road my entire life. Same house my parents bought before I was born. Same neighbors I grew up knowing by name. The Aldrin house is 4 doors down on the left. A 2-story brick house that used to look like every other house on the street. Same style, same proportions, built in the same decade. 11 years ago, the Aldrin family left. I was 16 at the time, old enough to notice, too young to fully understand. What I remember is that it happened quickly. 1 week they were there, Martin and Susan Aldrin, and their son Philip, who was in my year at school. The next week a removal truck came and took most of the furniture, and then they were gone. No goodbye, no explanation to the neighbors, no for sale sign. The house has sat empty since then. Over the years it has become a fixture, part of the street the way a tree or a lamppost is part of the street. You stop seeing it after a while. It becomes background. But it never fully disappears, because every few months something happens that brings it back into focus. Mrs. Heller at number 14 once called the council about the garden, said the overgrowth was becoming a hazard. The council sent someone to look at it. The man walked up to the front gate, stood there for a moment, then got back in his van and drove away. Mrs. Heller never heard back from the council. A group of teenagers tried to break in about 6 years ago. 3 of them. They got as far as the front gate before one of them started crying and wouldn't stop. They left without going further. The one who had been crying moved schools the following month. Nobody knew why. A property developer knocked on doors along the street 2 years ago. Said he was interested in acquiring the house, redeveloping the plot. He spoke to several neighbors, including my mother, got as far as taking photographs of the exterior from the pavement. Then he stopped returning calls. His company's website went offline 3 weeks later. These things happen around that house. Not dramatically, not in ways you can point to and say definitively that something is wrong. Just a consistent pattern of people approaching it and then quietly retreating. I had never questioned it. It was just the way things were. Until 3 months ago when Philip Aldrin came back. I almost didn't recognize him. He was 27 now, same as me, but he looked older than that, tired in a way that had nothing to do with a long drive. He knocked on our door on a Tuesday evening. My mother answered. I heard his voice in the kitchen and came out to see who it was. He looked at me for a moment, then said he needed to talk to someone who had lived on this street the whole time, someone who had been watching that house. We sat in the living room. My mother made tea. Philip sat on the edge of the sofa with his hands around his mug and looked at the floor for a long moment before speaking. He said he was sorry for leaving the way they had, without warning, without explanation. Said his parents had made that decision. He had been 16. He hadn't had a choice. I asked him why they had left. He looked up at me and said because his father had gone into the house one night, after 11 years of living there, had gone into the front door like he had done 10,000 times before, and come out different. I asked what he meant by different. Philip put his mug down on the coffee table, very carefully, like he needed a moment. He said his father, Martin, had started talking in his sleep, which he had never done before in his life. Said the things he said in his sleep weren't words exactly, more like patterns. Sounds arranged in a way that resembled language, but wasn't any language Philip or his mother had ever heard. Said it started the night after whatever happened in the house, and didn't stop, not once in the weeks before they left. Every night, the same sounds, the same patterns, coming from his parents' bedroom. His mother, Susan, had eventually recorded it on her phone, played it to a doctor, played it to a linguist at the local university. Neither of them could identify it. The linguist had asked to hear it again, then asked where it had come from. When Susan told him her husband spoke in his sleep, he had gone very quiet and said she should consider moving her family out of their home. They left 2 weeks after that. I asked Philip where his parents were now. His expression shifted slightly. He said his mother was fine, living in Edinburgh with her sister, healthy. Then he said his father had died 4 years ago. Heart attack officially. But Philip said the night before he died, his father had woken up in the middle of the night. First time in years he had been fully lucid, fully present, like himself again. He had looked at Philip and said one thing: "Don't go back to that house. Whatever you do, don't go back inside." Then he had gone back to sleep and not woken up. After Philip told me about his father, I sat with it for a moment. Then I asked him the obvious question: why had he come back? He said, because something had started happening to him in the last 6 months. Dreams. The same dream repeating. He is standing outside the house on Crestfield Road. It is night. The front door is open, and his father is standing in the doorway, calling to him, not in words, in those sounds, those patterns that weren't any language. He said he had tried ignoring it, told himself it was grief, unresolved things from losing his father. But the dreams had gotten more specific. His father pointing towards something inside the house, something Philip couldn't see from the doorway, something in the back. He said he had driven to Crestfield Road that morning before knocking on our door, had sat outside the house in his car for an hour. I asked if he had gone in. He shook his head, said he couldn't make himself do it alone, said he needed someone who knew the street, someone who had been watching the house, someone who might understand what he was walking into. I should have said no. I want to be clear about that. Every sensible part of me knew I should have said no. But I had been looking at that house for 11 years, and part of me had always wanted to know. We went the following evening. My neighbor Owen Marsh came with us. He's 34, works in construction, practical and unimpressed by most things. I told him what Philip had told me. He listened without interrupting, then said he'd come along. Said 3 people was safer than 2 regardless of what we were dealing with. Philip still had a key, had kept it for 11 years without knowing why. We went in just after 8. Still light outside. Owen had a torch. The inside of the house was exactly as the Aldrins had left it. Furniture still in place. A thin layer of dust over everything. A calendar on the kitchen wall, showing the month they had left. The smell of a place that had been sealed for a long time. Stale and flat. We moved through the ground floor slowly. Kitchen, living room, dining room. Nothing unusual. Just an empty house frozen in time. Philip barely spoke. Just moved through the rooms with a specific kind of focus. Like he was looking for something. Like he already had an idea of where it was. He stopped at a door beneath the staircase. A door I wouldn't have noticed on my own. Painted the same color as the wall around it. No handle visible. just a slight seam in the plasterwork. He pressed his palm flat against it. The door swung inward. Behind it was a narrow staircase leading down. Owen shone the torch into it. Concrete steps. A basement of some kind. Philip said this was where the dream always ended, at the top of these steps. Looking down, his father pointing from somewhere below. Owen went first. I followed. Philip came last. The basement was a single room, low ceiling, bare concrete walls, empty except for one thing. In the center of the floor, a circle drawn in chalk, about 2 meters across, and inside the circle, symbols, the same symbols repeating, dense and careful, like someone had spent a very long time drawing them. Philip crouched at the edge of the circle, looking at the symbols, his face completely still. Owen asked what it was. Philip said he recognized the symbols. I asked how. He said because they were the same patterns his father had spoken in his sleep, the same sounds rendered as shapes, written on the floor of the house his father had never wanted him to enter again. We left the house, locked the door behind us, stood on the pavement in the evening light, and didn't speak for a while. That was 6 weeks ago. Philip went back to Edinburgh 2 days after that. Sent me one message a week later. Said the dreams had stopped. Said he didn't know if that was good or bad. Said he thought it meant whatever had been waiting for him to come back was satisfied now. I've thought about that word a lot since. Satisfied. Owen hasn't spoken about that night since it happened. I've tried to bring it up twice. Both times he changed the subject. The second time he asked me to stop asking. The house still sits 4 doors down. Same overgrown garden. Same still curtains. Same silence. But something is different now. Something I can't fully articulate. Before we went inside, it felt like a house that was simply empty, waiting to be filled with something ordinary. A family. A new start. Normal life. Now it feels like something that has been fed. And I am very aware that I live 4 doors away. And that I was inside it. And that whatever is in that basement now knows my face.